Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own song you'd like to submit for special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's comes at us from Clownsec. It says Spiral Architect Insects. You're going to dig this one. I look forward to your analysis on this amazing track from 1999 that still sounds modern today. Thanks for offering your time. Well, you're welcome. Let's dig into this. We got some Spiral Architect ahead of us. The song is called Insect. Let's see what they're bringing to the table. '99. I'm loving that bass work. Interesting choice with it though. It didn't calm down like everything else did. Cymbal work picking up the slack where the bass left off. Ooh, got a little bit of a... Okay. Yeah, so we were in 6, we've shifted to a very fast 4 here. The song started in 4. Really beautiful acoustic guitar over here. Can't tell if we were in 7 or 13 there. But really nice interlude going to this guitar solo. All right. Okay, very extended riff right here. Some temporal shifts to it. Shifted to Phrygian. Yeah. It's interesting hearing all the technical stuff that came before it, and we move into something that's just very Dream Theater-y here. What is that polyrhythm? The cymbals jumped in on it too. the dude's vocals too, just really powerful belts. Kind of a timeless vocal style. There's that acoustic guitar again. Pay attention to this. This is some fun stuff. We're in a 3-3-2 breakdown of a 4-4 section. How is it simultaneously metal, like metalcore and Zappa? Yeah, just really trudging along here. Interesting, we've had a lot of melodic and technical aspects, and this is the first time we've slowed down for more of a textual thing. That halftime modulation. Interesting there at the end. I don't know what was causing it, but it was really moving into um, like the toilet bowl sound at the end, where everything was just sort of narrowing down and flattening out. Like if you've ever tried to record your vocals, whether it's for singing or you're trying to do a podcast or whatever, and you didn't account for outside noise, right? And you use noise reduction software plugins or whatever. And if it's just too much, it just removes all the character from the vocals, and it just sounds like I don't necessarily think, to me, I get the visualization of a toilet bowl sound, but it's the phrase that I've always heard associated with this sound, and that's what it sounded like there at the end, where it was just kind of the music was compressing in upon itself. I'm leaving this up real quick though because I want to talk about something real quick. So this album art, I think it is. Uh, I'm curious if anybody else did this format with the lead. I'm going to assume musician or the front person in the front, with the rest of the members fanning out to the sides, utilizing a very heavy color filter. This one being blue. It's a very, very cool picture. Cool as in cold. Cool versus warm, orange versus blue kind of thing. Um, and up at the top we have this really deep blue, and as it goes down, we kind of wash out to more of a blue gray on the arms. And then the camera's below them, pointing up at them, right? Okay, so this exact composition of what is this? An image, a picture, picture composition. Why can't I say that? It reminds me so much of Metalocalypse, except they used like a red gradient, more of a warmer tone than this. But like everything about it reminds me so much about. I think it's the opening, the opening credits or whatever you want to call it, of the show. And Nathan explosions in front, and then they kind of fan out to the side, and they all have very serious faces looking down. So you get this angular, almost making them like giants, and then it's very dramatic as well. We have all these shadows over their faces, and it's just the same idea, like everything about this. I wonder if Metalocalypse is a parody show of many ways, and I'm sure that them taking that shot comp, that's what I wanted, shot composition. They probably borrowed it from a major shot from another band, or possibly a trend, and I'm seeing it here, and I'm wondering if this is where their inspiration was from, or if this was just a very big trend with lots of bands going for this type of band pick. I don't know, completely unrelated to everything else, But it as soon as I noticed it, I couldn't not. I had to look away from the screen because every time it would just take over my brain. I would stop listening about the music. I'm like, that's the Metalocalypse picture, but in blue. So yeah, just like I said, completely unrelated, but yeah, so there's a lot of really interesting things in here. This is odd to me. One second. All right, so I was trying to see if there's a date on this CD. It's Between the Buried and Me's self-title. Yeah, their first album. I was trying to see what year that was because musically, I can hear a lineage between this and that. This is done with a foot still in the past. This still feels like some of the 90s prog rock. That, of course, was inspired by 80s prog rock. But, there are elements in here that feel very much like a bridge between bands like Dream Theater and bands like Between the Buried and Me, or, Human Abstract, especially their earlier works. Not Hybrid Theory. Nocturne. Like this feels like it's right there in the middle where it's beginning to get into that 2000s prog metal sound, but there's still that foot in the door that holds them back and keeps them rooted in more of that 90s prog rock, prog metal, whatever you want to call it. And we kind of see ideas from both of them in here. And I think it's really interesting to view it from the lens of both sides while also understanding that it might have been very innovative for the time. Like I said, to me there's still some sections that just scream bands like Dream Theater, and to me those are more iterative, maybe wearing your inspirations on your sleeve moments. But there's a lot of things in here that, at least to me, feel very ahead of the curve. Knowing that this came out in '99, which still kind of blows my mind. I think Between the Buried and Me came out in '03. I'm gonna double check that because it's not. I need to know, right? But it's really interesting. They formed in 2000 and 2002, so I was 1 year off on that. They recorded it in '01 though. So yeah, this sound was not as far away as I thought. They formed in 2000 and began recording this in 2001, so I'd assume that it was written, well, at the tail end, December of '01. So it was probably written throughout 2000 and 2001, which is, 1-2 years away from '99 when this came out. Very interesting, though. But yeah, so like when I say, they have, the inspirations from prog rock and they kind of are leading the way for prog metal, what does any of that mean, right? That's the important thing. That's what we're here for. So there's a lot of technical playing in here. And we've checked out Dream Theater's Stream of Consciousness. I think that's one of them. And we did one with Time Signatures. I don't remember what it was called, though. Dance of Eternity? Is that what it is? I think so. Anyways, we've heard a more technical side of Dream Theater, but a lot of their technicality, at least in my limited exposure to them, is based around time. They play around with time a lot, not just the time signature, but the modulating the way that the rhythmic functions are. And basically what a lot of that is going to be polyrhythmic polymeter stuff, which kind of ties back into that time signature stuff, and also using different types of tuplets to stretch or compress the feeling of time in specific sections. For instance, well, not even tuplet, because we can also use dotted notes. Dotted notes will kind of have the same effect for stretching. But we actually heard that in this track when I think we moved to a triplet feel and it put more space between the notes, but we did the triplet feel for like an entire bar inside of a phrase. So we were moving at this speed, and then there was more space between each of the strikes, and then we went back to the same spacing we had at the beginning, and it felt like just for a moment time kind of stretched out for a little bit before snapping back. And that's exactly how they did that. They probably used triplets or uh, quadruplets, quadplets. I don't think we have a term for that, and I brought that up the other day. I still don't know. I need to go look that up. But yeah, just putting more notes within the same amount of space, or less notes within the same amount of space, just to change the amount of spacing between each attack. Each time we hear a note, like dot, 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 each of those is an attack. We can even hold out the note after them. We get da, 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 but you still hear that initial strike. That's the attack. Putting more space between it makes it feel longer. Putting less space between it makes it feel more compressed. And that's what I associate with Dream Theater, is a lot of time stuff. That's not to say that they're not great musicians or that they can't play their instruments with virtuosity. They can. They're very talented musicians as well. But I just don't associate that with them. Maybe because I come at them from a different lens. I did not grow up with Dream Theater. I ended up growing up with bands like Periphery and Human Abstract. So my understanding of my understanding of technicality tends to be more speed based, right? There's definitely metric stuff in there and chordal stuff in there, which we did see some chordal stuff in here, which is neat too. But it's just more of that the speed based element, right? And so we kind of have these two eras of progressive metal or progressive rock, whatever you want to call it, where we have the rock sound. We have the guitars and the bass and the drums and the vocals. And in one era, we have clean vocals with a lot of metric modulation and some, I guess we can call it more thoughtful technical playing. And on the other side, we go into prog metal, which tends to have harsh vocals and more technicality in speed and dexterity of it all. Kind of less so about metric ideas. And again, those are generalizations. They don't apply to every single band on either side of the camp. And they also probably aren't that great as blanket ideas altogether, but I think it's going to work for the effectiveness of this conversation because I do believe it is fairly accurate to describe both ways in that manner, even if it isn't entirely accurate. And this band, like I said, sits in between that. We have a lot of the metric stuff. I talked about it starting in 4, moving to 6, coming back to a faster 4, having that metric modulation with the triplets. There was a section in there that was either 7/4 or 13/8. I couldn't quite make it out, but we did have an odd time signature. And we also have a lot of moments of polyrhythms, and I think that's about it. Just a lot of really metric stuff going on. Another thing about the prog rock era, especially of the 90s, is that they still kind of had a little bit of jazz influence, especially if we're looking specifically at Dream Theater and some of their more exploratory works. There's still a little bit of that jazz holdover from 80s prog and jazz fusion that we can still see in here. There's a lot of playfulness with chords. We have quite a few different styles. We have some more uplifting chords. We have some heavier chords, some tense chords. We entered into a Phrygian mode for a moment. The ending went into more of a textual, probably a power chord, which is going to be one of the simpler chords because it's based off of a lot of stability, which is our root, our fifth, and our octave. Very stable intervals between notes. And we kind of went into more of a textual thing, not really aiming for a specific emotion, but just going for that heaviness of metal, of the guitar tone, right? So yeah, we went through a lot of different vibes chordally, which I could probably also... Dang, man, that is the first time I've punched the microphone. Normally it's a little hit. Sorry for anybody with headphones and, that might have been loud. That I can probably attribute over to the earlier stuff. And we can also hear a lot of this bass presence and bass love that harkens to me at least back to jazzier inspired rock, not necessarily because of jazz, not because it sounds jazzy, but just because jazz tends to put a lot of weight on the bass sound. It's a very important instrument for the genre. Unlike rock and metal, it doesn't get covered up almost ever. It's so important to the song, and we saw that here. Not only did it carry the melody in a lot of sections, not only did it have walking bass lines when it wasn't playing a melody, but it was so prominent in the mix. So yeah, we have elements from both sides of this turning point of when prog rock became, or when prog metal emerged out of prog rock's whatever. Um, that's like the least expressive I think you'll ever hear me when it did whatever. I think you get the gist of it though, like seeing these two sides of the prog styles in rock and metal. Um, and then on the other side though, where it's a lot of technicality in playing, we can hear a lot of that here. The bass is playing some ridiculous lines, and it's existing as counterpoint to what the guitars are doing. And sometimes we have counterpoint between the bass, the guitars, and the vocals. There's just a lot of layering going on melodically and kind of not texturally but atmospherically. There are some lines that are not doing melodies, but they're not exactly doing chords either. They're sort of adding, embellishing ideas. And interestingly, when I think one of the first times this popped up was after we heard the bass. The bass came in strong with melody and kind of reverted back to more of uh, an ornamental idea, right? The guitars had taken over the melody, and the bass was just playing a simple riff in the background to help accentuate certain beats. And this is when the cymbals picked up. The cymbals were kind of in the background for a lot of the beginning of the track, and here they came in real strong, not only to continue on where the bass was rhythmically, but also to take a little bit more of the spotlight and showcase the drummer. And it's just really neat how these ideas can continue to morph over the flow of the song, which kind of gives me more of an older feel. Whereas bands like Between the Buried and Me would just kind of jump between ideas rapidly. And of course, that led to stuff like, Car Bomb and bands that really pushed that idea to the limits. The 90s prog rock stuff was very focused, at least again, in my experience, on flowing elements and making sure the ideas kind of ran into each other and told a larger story. And we can see a lot of that here. There's a lot of transitory ideas where either we have an instrument bringing in the next section, playing the next riff a few bars early to introduce it before we move into it, or we have one instrument passing their idea to another instrument, or we move into a new section but one of the instruments doesn't and they continue on the last idea. There's all these different ways that the sections have connective tissue between each other, and it's just very neat to hear the song sort of in a way gradually evolve into what it does at the end. It's not really this section and then this section and then this section and then that section. It's sort of all just one section that just changes every 20 or 30 bars. It changes so mildly, but there's still a connective element to that the first section or the section that comes after it. There's no real clear divide to say that this is a brand new section when it still includes something that we were just listening to, and it's beginning to have something that's going to be introduced in the next section. So it's kind of a part of where we were. It is definitely where we are, and it includes ideas from where we're going. There's just this really nice metamorphosis musically that I think exists in this track, and it's fascinating to listen to. Um, I want to talk about vocals real quick because they caught me off guard. We started off with this really nice belt with a wide vibrato to it. Very much reminds me of 90s prog. Just has that nice big booming vibrato that I associate with bands like Dream Theater and I don't know other bands like that. I don't know why I can't think of anything other than Dream Theater right now. Um, Maybe you guys need to give me more '90s prog rock to check out, so I have more references when I correlate bands like this. Um, yeah, just a really nice, powerful, wide vibrato that I think works well. And we had it through the entire track. We never really went to a moment when he was singing forward, like a lot of pop and rock from the '90s. And he never really went to a moment when he went for a harsh of any type. He just really stuck with that sound projecting from the back of his mouth and getting that really nice, warm, wide vibrato to it. That was the whole song up until like the last 40 seconds, and he brings out a growl out of nowhere. And, I was very taken aback by that. I was not expecting that at all. And, this was also an interesting part because the song began to transition as well from mostly melodic work into this rhythmic textual stuff where it's more focused on the rhythm and the feel of the section than any melodic or counterpoint or chordal stuff that would be going on in it. And, this kind of makes me feel like more modern musics, right? Um, this is where a lot of metal is right now, especially in some of the proggier stuff. Gent, right? Gent is so much about rhythm right now. It's about finding a nice tone, a nice chord or whatever, and then just chugging out disjointed rhythms in it and getting more of a feel based on the textures and rhythms than any melody. And I'm seeing some of that in the ending of this song. It's really bonkers. Like I said, it feels so much like it's a song stuck between two worlds. 99. I don't prog. All right, metal historians here. Let me know what's up. What was prog rock feeling like in the end of the '90s, early 2000s? Me growing up in the 2000s, I didn't even hear about bands like Dream Theater. Right, that was the thing that. Uh, oh, you know what's weird though is that I did hear about Dream Theater once. This drama kid that I hung out with was infatuated with Metropolis. I don't know if that was an album. I know there was a two-part song, but yeah, that was the only time I heard about Dream Theater was from a drama nerd buddy. And but yeah, like Dream Theater just wasn't part of the pop culture talking then. And so I'm wondering if like what prog rock was looking like at this point in time, right? As we were moving on, because I'm going to say something that kind of relies on a specific idea about prog rock that may not be going on, but this album or this song feels like it's simultaneously too late to be prog rock, but way too early or a couple years too early to be prog metal. And I wonder if that's why I haven't really heard the name Spiral Architect, despite having both prog rock and prog metal showcased fairly well on the channel. It's not those aren't two genres that I feel I have limited um, listening to. And I wonder if Spiral Architect was just wrong place, wrong time, but definitely the right music that would turn into something like a hidden gem. Speaking of jazzy elements, I do want to bring up the one or two guitar solos that we had. One of them was during the Phrygian section, and I can't remember what the other one. I think it was just standard rock stuff. Anyways, though, I absolutely love their melodic phrasing. I mean, I kind of knew what I was in store for when I heard the opening melody, right? Especially when it was given to the bass, and it was just this constant flow. It wasn't like a four beat phrase. It was this nice elongated flow. I think the second riff we heard was like a 16 beat or 16 bar riff. It was very extended. Just not something we see too often in rock or metal, which tends to work with 4 or 8 bar phrases, and even 8 is sometimes a bit lengthy. This one really pushes the distance, and like I said, it all kind of flows well. So the fact that their solos have beautiful melodic flow to them is something I should have expected, but listening to them, absolutely loved it. Interestingly, we also had a bit of interesting instrumentation going on with the acoustic guitar showing up. and it came out of nowhere. And what was most interesting about it wasn't that it was just an acoustic guitar, even though the song very rarely dropped down to a moment where it felt like it fit sonically, but it also brought about sort of a Spanish flair. It wasn't quite flamenco, but it felt like it was Spanish style finger playing, which was bonkers because it fit, and I don't know why it fit, but it sounds so good against some of the proggier ideas playing, and maybe that's just because there is a strong emphasis on melodic quality more so than the tone or the vibe. They really weren't going for that metal sound, and maybe that's why this classical guitar actually fit well within it. But yeah, it was actually really impressive how they incorporated that, even when it sonically didn't fit. It felt like it was both being drowned out and playing way too loud for the instrument that it is. I know about acoustic electrics, but it sounds like an electric, and it just usually doesn't get to fight with electric guitar, or it felt like an acoustic, and those don't usually get to fight with electrics. Usually bands will bring the song down to a lower volume and switch to acoustic, and maybe I'm just used to that, or maybe I'm just used to acoustics being a bit on the quieter side against amps. But yeah, it never really felt like it fit sonically, but musically, texturally, it sounded fantastic. I absolutely love them bringing that in. And I think that's everything I want to talk about. We pulled up the influences, we pulled up the contrast between the textual versus the melodic stuff, the vocals doing the same, the jazz influence, the instrumentation, the bass given prominence. Yeah, and just the raw technicality of it. So yeah, I think we're ready to move on to the lyrics here. So we got a bliss torn transaction incomplete. As fall entombed their mother sphere, bent to the sky, artificial eye. Crushed nature moans, enlightened, drained was the heart of man, insects spawning, hybrids crawling, in spinning cluster skies were soaring. I got nothing. Two stanzas in. Oh, geez, there's only five stanzas total. Two stanzas in, and I have no idea what we're talking about. There's definitely some sort of higher idea going on here. Um, we've talked about the mother sphere, an artificial eye that's bent to the sky, crushed enlightenment, the heart of man being drained, insects and hybrids and spinning clusters going across the sky. I mean, there's just a lot of bad things seem to be happening. Not that insect spawning are bad. We need insects. They're awesome creatures. But they're typically spoken about in the idea of a swarm, especially when paired up against the idea of hybrids crawling and spinning clusters in the skies. I've seen tomorrow's sun die into the darkness skies, but as poison seeds and acid rot the earth, we will fly into exile. Interesting. Then we have something in another language. O motri te salutant. That's probably terrible. Defier of the night, fierce adulterers, what's the destination of their selfish search? Forced into spiral alterations, the coils of pain, hybrids crawling and spinning cluster skies are soaring. They've got to reconcile, their cause is unpure, the poor invest in stolen grace. Yeah, I've got nothing. This is a series of sparse informations. I'm constantly being given parts of an idea that I'm supposed to tie together with the other parts of another idea that I'm getting next to it, and I'm just not seeing the bigger picture here. A lot of these lines are actually broken up into two sections. Sometimes they seem to directly correlate, like the idea bent to the sky, artificial eye. I'm going to assume that the artificial eye is what's bent towards the sky, is what's, looking towards the sky. But there's other things: crushed, nature moans, enlightened. that's one single line in the stanza with two commas in it, creating three separate ideas. And I'm just, some of this is just going right over my head. That's a lie. All of this is going right over my head. It's just very metaphorical, and I'm going to say that there's going to be a lot of double meanings in this, where it's going to deepen the understanding of the lyrics in a way that allows it to mean something beyond what's just on the surface, which appears to be the destruction of nature and man's attempt to escape from it, possibly to space. That's kind of what I get out of this. The earth rots from acid, there's poison seeds. It says the heart of man has been drained, nature moans being crushed. And against all of this interesting nature speak, we have mother sphere and the heart of man, insects, and the sun that's dying and the earth that's rotting. Like, we have a lot of this. And then on the other side of that, though, we have a very technical, we have artificial eyes, and we have man's flight into exile and darkened skies. To me, this is very almost science fiction-y, bringing in an artificial element, a man-made element, into this idea of nature. The fires of the night, what's their destination of the selfish search? So yeah, that's kind of my vibe on it, but I'm really basing that off of just a few lines. The rest of it goes right over my head. So those are my thoughts on Spiral Architects Insects. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this track. Let me know if you have anything you'd like to add to what I said, anything that you'd like to amend or fix what I said, correct what I've said. And I did have quite a few questions in here regarding Spiral Architect themselves and sort of prog rock and prog metal, this transitory era in '99 that took us from the '90s into the new millennia, and how music might have shifted there. So yeah, a few questions I'd like to get answered, and like I said, any thoughts that you might have about what I said about it. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link to Linktree. Takes you to this menu right here. Has everything related to the channel. Pick up some merch, join a Discord, join the Patreon, follow me on Twitter, just a bunch of stuff. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We're going to look at our final Wild Screamers track, and we're going to look at an LGBTQ band or artist for Pride Month. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.